I want to switch topics here, unless we have somebody call in and decides they want to talk about the NFL. I want to talk now about a game the other night between the Vancouver Canucks and the Calgary Flames. 2 seconds into the game, there were line brawls. And what I mean by that is all 5 skaters, on both teams, got into a fight. Actually, I think at one point one of the goalies tried to get into a fight, and then it was pushed aside. But again, Calgary sends out its goons. Vancouver sends out its goons. And what happens? We have a fight right off the top. Now, that's Bob Hartley. We're showing part of the thing. We're going to show later on in the video, John Tortorella, the coach of the Vancouver Canucks, basically tried to, there he is over there. He's mouthing off at Bob Hartley. Bob Hartley's basically indifferent to the whole thing. He's not saying much, doesn't really care. John Tortorella tried to get to the Calgary Flames locker room afterwards. John Tortorella is now in big, well, you can use any word you want to use, because the NHL now has begun the investigation. For all I know, later today they may announce what it's going to be. It's either going to be a hefty fine and or a lengthy suspension, because that was about as bad as you could possibly get. The game of hockey is a fairly simple game. One team scores more goals than the other. In this particular case, it's like one coach deciding, and he's the home coach. He's got the last change and all that. So John Tortorella decides he's going to put his goon line against the other goon line, and not surprisingly, again, we have fighting at the start. The Vancouver Canucks are a team that's in a major free fall. This is the first year that John Tortorella is coaching the Vancouver Canucks. Longtime coach in New York, won a Stanley Cup as a coach of the Tampa Bay team. So again, he's got that on his resume, on his CV, that he's won a Stanley Cup. He goes to New York, and it becomes like a sideshow because of all the stuff that's happening off the ice. Him getting into like verbal feuds with Larry Brooks, a writer for one of the local papers there. And it's become every day John Tortorella is going to be like a smart ass, and not just with Larry Brooks, but with various members of the media to show that he's pompous and that he's smarter than everybody else. He decides, they change coaches. He ends up going to Vancouver. Alain Vigneault ends up going to New York. So it's like trading coaches, if you will. And John Tortorella decides, the problems that he had there in terms of his relationships with the media, he's going to basically turn it over, right? He's going to, it's kind of like almost like in wrestling. We'll talk a little about wrestling later on, but, the heel turning into a face. And for the most part, John Tortorella's been on best behavior. But this is about as far removed from anything that he was before. This is like really extreme. I'm pretty sure he has been fined for some of the things that he's done basically by the NHL for the way he's treated the media or didn't do certain things, obligations that are required. But this is something completely different. We haven't seen this. This is like Slapshot. Okay? We all watch Slapshot. We've seen it many times, and how ridiculous sometimes that stuff is on the ice. Some of the things that they do. This is it. This is Slapshot. We saw it the other day. The NHL is going to come down hard on John Tortorella because this reflects poorly on the game. People talk about fighting. Why do they really have to have fighting? Look at them there. Come on. People talk about fighting. There's no need for fighting in the NHL, but it's a big part of the NHL. What that was not. That's like a mockery. It's a shame. It's a bamboozle. Fighting like that to start the game and then having a coach afterwards try to get into another team's locker room? That's bush. That's bad. It reflects very poorly on the game itself. And as a result, as I said, the NHL is going to come down hard on John Tortorella. He may face a 20-game suspension. When you think about the fact that the Vancouver Canucks have been struggling this year, and now they're going to lose a coach, what value does John Tortorella have right now? If you're the ownership of the Vancouver Canucks, and John Tortorella is going to be suspended, and the team's already in a free fall, do you look at it and say, do I want to have this guy as my coach? Is that really what I hired him to do? Because he's lost it big time. And it's probably not just he lost it, it was premeditated if he's going to have his goon line going up against the other team's goon line. What if he puts out the Sedin line? What's really going to happen? Is their goon line going to beat up the Sedin twins? Or their line? It just didn't really make any sense. So now it's going to be a situation where the NHL, at the best of times, and you look at Brendan Shanahan, where he's levying suspensions or fines against players, for doing things on the ice, hitting from behind, slew footing, whatever means of things that are determined that is not what the NHL is about. That's not what they want to reflect. So I don't even know if this is going to be a Brendan Shanahan matter. I have a feeling this is going right to the top with Gary Bettman. Gary Bettman will address this because it's very poor. It's not really what the NHL wants to have. And this thing goes viral. In this age of social media, everybody has seen that thing. It's gone through so many different versions of people seeing it. And it's funny because I read something on social media. It's amazing how Richard Sherman's comment at the end of the game last night have basically overtaken John Tortorella's hissy fit and what he did, his temper tantrum. It's kind of not usurped, but maybe just it's become bigger in terms of what people are talking about. Think about it, folks. When you watch the NHL, do you want to see something like that? I don't even think the NHL must be actually just spinning its head thinking, how far behind have we gotten? This is something that we want our teams to do. Line brawls aren't necessarily unique. You don't see them that much anymore, but you don't see this. I do recall, if memory serves correct, and it's funny now that I'm thinking about it, I think last year there was a game right at the start where there was some fighting. It may have been the Rangers. I could be wrong about that. I'll have to, when we go to break, we'll try to check that out. But there was some team that got into two teams that engaged in a brawl right off the top. But nothing like what you see there where John Tortorella trying to go into the other team's locker room. Just Bush. Really, really bad. And again, it'll be interesting to see what happens in terms of where this goes.